No one noticed her at first, and then, when they did, they chose not to. She stood just inside the cafe door, clutching the strap of her worn bag like it was the only thing anchoring her to the ground. Outside, the late afternoon sky hung heavy with the promise of rain, but inside, the cafe was warm, bright, and full of life. Laughter spilled from tables, spoons clinked against ceramic cups, and the smell of fresh coffee wrapped itself around every corner like a quiet invitation. It was the kind of place where people lingered, where conversations stretched and time softened. But for her, it felt like stepping into a room where she didn't belong. Her name was Amina, though no one there knew it. No one asked. Her eyes moved from table to table, searching, not for luxury, not for comfort, but simply for a place to sit. Every chair seemed occupied, even the ones that weren't. Bags were placed deliberately on empty seats, jackets draped carelessly, invisible barriers silently telling her to keep moving. A few people glanced up as she passed, their expressions shifting in that subtle, almost unnoticeable way, curiosity turning into discomfort, then into indifference. She lowered her gaze, pretending not to notice. Her shoes were dusty from walking too far, her dress simple and slightly wrinkled, and her face carried the quiet exhaustion of someone who had been turned away too many times in one day. She wasn't asking for much, just a chair, just a moment to breathe. But even that felt like too much. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet power of a single good act, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder that humanity still exists, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that touch the heart. And tell me in the comments, have you ever felt invisible in a crowded room? Amina moved further inside, her steps hesitant but determined. The barista noticed her then, offering a polite but distant smile before returning to the machine. No one called out to her, no one waved her over. She reached an empty table near the window, her heart lifting slightly, only to pause when she noticed a neatly placed handbag on one chair and a laptop on the other. A silent claim, "Not here." She turned again, scanning the room, feeling the weight of every glance that lingered just a second too long. A couple at a nearby table leaned closer to each other, their voices dropping as she passed. A group of friends laughed loudly, but their laughter shifted, tightened when she neared. It wasn't anything obvious, no harsh words, no direct rejection, just absence, just space that refused to welcome her. Her chest tightened, and for a moment she considered leaving. Maybe the rain outside would be kinder than this quiet rejection. Maybe standing alone on the street would hurt less than standing among people who chose not to see her. But then, just as she turned toward the door, a small voice broke through the noise. A child's voice, soft, curious, unfiltered, and everything began to change. The voice didn't come with hesitation or judgment. It came with pure curiosity, the kind only a child could offer. Amina paused mid-step, her fingers tightening around her bag as she turned slightly toward the sound. At a corner table sat a man and a little girl, no older than 5. The girl was swinging her legs under the chair, her wide eyes fixed on Amina as if she had just discovered something important. The man, her father, followed her gaze a second later, his expression shifting from distraction to quiet awareness. He saw what others had seen, but he didn't look away. For a brief moment there was silence between them, the kind that holds 1,000 unspoken things. Amina felt it instantly. She was used to that moment, the moment when people decided what she meant to them, the moment before they turned away. But this time, something different happened. The man gently moved the extra chair at his table, clearing a small space, his gesture simple yet powerful in its quiet defiance of everything the room had been telling her. He didn't make a scene, he didn't call attention to it, he simply created space where none had been offered. Amina hesitated. Her instincts told her to refuse, not out of pride, but out of habit.
Life had taught her that kindness often came with conditions, with hidden expectations, with strings she couldn't afford to hold. But something in the little girl's gaze, open, hopeful, untouched by the world's quiet cruelty, made it impossible to walk away. So she stepped forward. Each step felt heavy, like she was crossing an invisible line she wasn't sure she was allowed to cross. The cafe seemed to shift around her, the sounds dulling slightly, as if the room itself was holding its breath. People noticed now. They always noticed when something disrupted the unspoken order. But she kept walking. When she reached the table, she stood for a second, unsure of what to do, unsure of how to exist in a space that had just been given to her. The man offered a small, reassuring smile, not the kind that pities, but the kind that recognizes. It was the smile of someone who understood what it meant to feel out of place, to carry more than you show, to stand alone even in a crowded room. Amina slowly sat down. The chair felt heavier than it should have, or maybe it was the moment that carried the weight. For the first time that day, she wasn't standing, she wasn't searching, she wasn't being silently pushed away. She was simply there. The little girl leaned forward, her eyes still fixed on Amina with innocent fascination. There was no judgment in her gaze, only curiosity, and something even rarer, acceptance without question. Time seemed to soften around the table. The cafe noise returned, but it felt different now, distant, less overwhelming. Amina placed her bag gently beside her feet, her hands resting in her lap, as if she wasn't quite sure what to do with them. Her shoulders, tense for so long, began to loosen ever so slightly. It wasn't just about the chair, it was about being seen. Moments passed, and something subtle began to change inside her. The tight knot of rejection she had been carrying all day began to unravel thread by thread, not completely, not at once, but enough for her to breathe a little easier. Around them, a few glances lingered longer than before, some curious, some uncomfortable, some quietly reflective, because kindness, when it appears in a place that has forgotten it, doesn't just help one person, it challenges everyone who witnesses it. The man didn't say much. He didn't need to. His actions had already spoken louder than anything words could offer. And for Amina, that was enough. For the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't feel invisible. She felt human.
Something shifted in Amina that evening. Something small but powerful, like the first crack of light through a long closed door. It wasn't loud or dramatic. There were no grand declarations, no sudden transformation, but deep inside her, a quiet belief began to take root. The belief that maybe the world wasn't entirely closed off to her, that maybe there were still places where she could exist without being pushed to the edges. She sat at that table longer than she expected, not because she had somewhere else to go, but because for the first time she didn't feel like she had to leave. The little girl's presence brought a strange kind of comfort. Her innocence filled the space with warmth, softening the sharp edges of Amina's day. And the man, with his calm, steady demeanor, created something even rarer, a sense of safety without intrusion. He didn't ask questions that dug too deep. He didn't try to fix anything. He simply allowed her to be there. And sometimes that is the greatest kindness of all. Outside, the rain finally began to fall, tapping gently against the cafe windows. People inside shifted, some preparing to leave, others settling in deeper. The world continued, as it always does, but for Amina, time had marked this moment differently. Because one small act had done what 100 silent rejections could not. It had reminded her that she still mattered. Eventually, she stood to leave, not because she was being pushed out, but because she was ready. That in itself was new. She picked up her bag, her movements slower now, more certain. As she stepped away from the table, she glanced back just once. The little girl waved, and Amina smiled. It was a small smile, fragile and new, but it carried something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. She stepped out into the rain, but it didn't feel as cold as before. The streets looked the same, the world unchanged, yet everything felt slightly different. Because when someone chooses kindness in a moment where it is easiest to ignore, it doesn't just change that moment, it changes what comes after. Days passed. Amina returned to that cafe again, though not immediately. It took courage to come back, to risk feeling invisible again. But when she did, something unexpected happened. She noticed things she hadn't before. A chair left empty at a crowded table, a stranger offering a small smile, a barista asking someone if they needed anything more. Tiny things, but they were there. Kindness, once introduced, has a way of spreading quietly, like ripples across still water. It doesn't announce itself, it doesn't demand attention, but it changes the shape of everything it touches. And Amina, who once stood at the edge of that room feeling unseen, began to find her place within it. Not all at once, but slowly. And that is how real change happens. Before this story ends, I want to ask you something important. If this moment touched your heart, if you've ever felt invisible or witnessed someone else being overlooked, take a second to comment below. Share your experience, because your story might be the one someone else needs to hear today. Amina never forgot that day, not because it was extraordinary to the world, but because it was extraordinary to her. One chair, one invitation, one act of quiet kindness. That was all it took. And if this story moved you, if it reminded you that even the smallest gesture can change someone's life, don't forget to like, share, and engage with this video. Because stories like this deserve to be seen, just like people like Amina do. Because in the end, it's never just about a seat at the table. It's about being given a place in the world.